The following evening, Rose appeared at the forward deck as promised, wearing a simpler dress that made her look younger, more herself. Jack was waiting, leaning against the railing with his sketchbook tucked under his arm. "You came," he said, unable to hide his surprise and delight. "I wasn't sure I would," Rose admitted. "This is madness." "Sometimes madness is the only sane response to an insane world," Jack replied, offering her his arm. "Come on, I want to show you something." He led her to a secluded spot near the ship's bow, where the ocean stretched endlessly under a canopy of stars. The night was clear, and the Milky Way blazed overhead like scattered diamonds. "I've never seen so many stars," Rose breathed, tilting her head back. "Different view from down here, isn't it?" Jack said. "In third class, we see the real sky. No fancy chandeliers blocking the view." They talked for hours, about art, about dreams, about the lives they wanted to live. Jack told her about his travels, sketching portraits in Paris cafes and sleeping under the stars in the American West. Rose spoke of her love for literature, how she devoured books in secret, dreaming of adventure beyond the gilded cage of high society. "I feel like I'm drowning," Rose confessed as they sat on a bench, the ship's gentle motion rocking them. "Every day the water gets higher and I can't breathe." "Then we'll have to teach you to swim," Jack said softly, taking her hand. His fingers were ink-stained and rough, so different from Cal's manicured hands. The sound of music drifted from the third-class common room below, an Irish fiddle playing a lively tune. Jack stood and extended his hand. "Dance with me," he said. "Here, but there's no proper floor, no. There's music, there's moonlight, and there's us. What more do we need?" Rose took his hand, and they danced on the deck under the stars. It wasn't the formal waltz of the ballroom, but something wild and free, full of laughter and spinning and stumbling over rope and machinery. For the first time in her life, Rose danced without counting steps or worrying about posture. When the music ended, they were breathless and grinning, still holding each other close. "I've never felt so alive," Rose whispered. "Then stay alive," Jack said, his forehead touching hers. "Promise me you'll stay alive, no matter what happens." "I promise," she said, not understanding why the words felt so urgent, so important. As the clock struck midnight, marking their second day together, neither realized how precious their promise would become. Monday evening arrived with an eerie calm. The sea was unusually still, like black glass reflecting the stars. Rose and Jack met on the first-class promenade deck, having grown bolder in their stolen meetings. "I've been thinking about what you said," Rose began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of her words. "About New York, about leaving." Jack's heart leaped. "And I'm scared," she admitted, "but I'm more scared of living a life that isn't mine. If you'll have me, if you'll help me find who I'm meant to be, I'll come with you." Jack lifted her off her feet, spinning her around as she laughed. "We'll figure it out together," he promised. "I'll paint, you'll write, and we'll see the world." They talked long into the night, making plans and sharing dreams. Rose removed her engagement ring, a massive diamond that had always felt like a shackle, and slipped it into her coat pocket. "I want to remember this moment forever," she said as they slow danced to music only they could hear. "Then I'll draw it," Jack said, pulling out his sketchbook. "Sit there by the railing. Let me capture how you look right now, free and happy and beautiful." Rose posed for him, feeling more herself than she ever had. As Jack's pencil moved across the paper, she felt transformed, no longer the trapped society girl, but a woman ready to embrace her own destiny. "There," Jack said, showing her the sketch. "That's how I see you, how you really are." In the drawing, Rose looked radiant, alive with possibility. It was her, but the truest version of herself. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "You're beautiful." They kissed again, longer this time, knowing tomorrow would bring New York and their new life together. The ship's engines hummed beneath their feet, carrying them toward what they believed would be their future. At 11:30 p.m., a lookout named Frederick Fleet spotted something in the darkness ahead. A massive wall of ice that seemed to rise from the ocean itself. His warning cry of "iceberg right ahead" shattered the peaceful night. Rose and Jack felt the ship shudder, a grinding scrape that ran through the steel hull like a death knell. They looked at each other, confusion replacing joy. "What was that?" Rose asked. Jack moved to the railing, peering into the darkness. Chunks of ice littered the deck, and he could hear shouting from the crew below. "I don't know," he said, but something cold settled in his stomach, a premonition that their 48 hours of love might be all they would ever have. As the Titanic began to list slightly to starboard, Rose gripped Jack's hand tighter, both of them sensing that their dance under the stars had become something more precious than they could have imagined, a final moment of perfect love before the world changed forever. The ship's band began to play in the distance, their music floating across the deck like a farewell song. Jack and Rose held each other close, not yet understanding that they were about to face the ultimate test of the love they had found in just 48 hours. "Stay alive," Jack whispered again, his earlier words now carrying the weight of prophecy. "I promise," Rose replied, her voice steady despite the growing chaos around them. And in that promise, their love story found its true beginning, not in the dancing and laughter of their stolen hours, but in the courage they would need for what came next. Sunday morning brought gray skies and choppy seas, but Rose felt lighter than air. She moved through the first-class dining room like a woman transformed, humming softly while her mother discussed wedding preparations. "Rose, dear, you seem unusually cheerful," her mother observed suspiciously. "Cal mentioned you retired early last night." "I slept wonderfully," Rose replied truthfully. She had dreamed of dancing under stars and calloused hands that knew how to create beauty. She arranged to meet Jack in the ship's library, a quiet sanctuary where they could talk without drawing attention. When she arrived, she found him studying a volume of Whitman's poetry, his lips moving silently as he read. "I celebrate myself and sing myself," Rose quoted, recognizing the passage. "And what I assume you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you." Jack looked up, his eyes bright with surprise and pleasure. "You know Whitman?" "I know lots of things I'm not supposed to know," Rose said, settling beside him on the leather sofa. "Women aren't meant to have opinions about poetry, or art, or anything, really." "What a waste," Jack said, closing the book but keeping his finger between the pages. "Your mind is the most beautiful thing about you, and that's saying something." Rose felt heat rise in her cheeks. No one had ever complimented her intelligence before. Only her appearance, her breeding, her suitability as a wife. They spent the afternoon hidden away, talking about books and sharing dreams. Jack showed her his sketches of Parisian street scenes, while Rose revealed her secret poetry, verses she'd written and hidden away from disapproving eyes. "You should publish these," Jack said, reading one of her poems about freedom and flight. "Impossible. Cal would never allow it, and Mother would faint dead away." "Then don't marry him." The words hummed between them like a challenge. Rose stared at Jack, seeing something in his eyes that made her heart race. Hope, possibility, and something deeper. "It's not that simple," she whispered. "It could be." Jack set down her poems and took her hands. "Come away with me, Rose. When we dock in New York, just walk away. We'll make it work somehow. You don't understand. I have obligations, debts." "I understand that you're dying inside," Jack interrupted. "I can see it in your eyes, in the way you move through your world like a ghost. But you're not a ghost, Rose. You're fire and light and everything beautiful in this world." Before she could protest, he kissed her, gentle at first, then deeper as she melted against him. In that kiss, Rose tasted freedom, tasted the life she could have if she were brave enough to take it. When they parted, both were trembling. "I love you," Jack said simply. "I know it's crazy. I know we've only known each other 2 days, but I love you." "I love you too," Rose whispered, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "God help me, I love you too." Outside the library windows, ice began to form on the ship's rigging as the Titanic sailed toward its date with destiny. The April air was crisp as the Titanic prepared for departure from Southampton. Rose DeWitt Buchater stood at the first-class deck railing, her emerald dress catching the afternoon sun. At 17, she felt trapped in a world of expectations, her engagement to Cal Hockley weighing on her heart like a stone. 3 decks below, Jack Dawson shuffled his worn deck of cards, his artist's eyes scanning the crowd. At 20, he had learned to survive on charm and quick wit, winning his third-class passage in a last-minute poker game. The ship represented freedom, a chance to start fresh in America. Their worlds collided that evening during dinner service. Rose, seeking escape from another tedious conversation about wedding arrangements, wandered toward the ship's lower decks. The sound of laughter drew her to the third-class dining area, where Jack was sketching fellow passengers while they shared stories and songs. "You shouldn't be here," Jack said, looking up from his drawing pad as Rose appeared in the doorway. Her silk gloves seemed almost luminous against the simple wooden walls. "Neither should you, by the looks of it," Rose replied, noticing his threadbare jacket and calloused hands. "Yet here we are." Jack set down his pencil. "I'm exactly where I belong. The question is, are you?" Something in his directness made Rose's carefully constructed composure crack. For the first time in months, she laughed. A real laugh, not the practiced tinkle expected at society gatherings. "I don't know any more," she admitted, stepping closer to examine his sketches. "These are beautiful. You have real talent." "Beauty is everywhere if you know how to look," Jack said, his eyes meeting hers. "Most people just don't take the time to see it." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of Rose's name being called from the upper decks. Her mother's voice, sharp with worry and social embarrassment, cut through the evening air. "I have to go," Rose whispered, but neither moved to leave. "Will I see you again?" Jack asked, his voice barely audible above the ship's engines. Rose hesitated, knowing the impossibility of their different worlds. Tomorrow evening. The forward deck, after sunset. As she hurried back to first class, Rose felt something she hadn't experienced in years, anticipation for tomorrow. Jack watched her go, already planning how he would capture the sparkle in her eyes on paper. Neither knew they had just begun a love story that would unfold in merely 48 hours, racing against time and an iceberg that waited in the dark Atlantic waters ahead.